I was tempted to preach about virginity today, since it is the subject of Paul's second reading, but then I thought to myself, nah, we don't have too many virgins in our church, so it wouldn't be appropriate. But it is a very interesting fact that Paul is advising virgins to remain virgins and unmarried men to not enter into marriage. If you think about it, it is a huge departure from a traditional Jewish theology in which Paul was raised after all. If you remember, in the Hebrew scriptures, the more children you have, the more God is blessing you. And if, God forbid, you are infertile, it meant that you did something wrong, that somehow, for some reason, God is punishing or cursing you. To be a virgin in your 20s, in the times of Paul, in Israel, in Jewish culture, was to be considered totally abnormal. So when Paul says, you virgins should remain virgins, he is making a huge departure from a traditional Jewish religious theology. No wonder some Bible scholars and historians believe that it was Paul, not Jesus, that created Christianity. That until Paul came on the scene, most Christians were simply Jews who believed in Jesus as Jewish Messiah. Well, in today's gospel passage from Mark, we hear Jesus preach in a synagogue in the city of Capernaum. And Mark says that people reacted to Jesus' preaching by saying, "Whoa, what is this? Some new kind of teaching with power and authority." New kind of teaching with authority. After all, Paul was not the only one who chose to depart from what his religion taught him. Jesus, as we know very well, in multiple places of the gospel, is evolving traditional Jewish thinking and theological understanding. That's why people say, Jesus, what is this? Some new kind of teaching. New kind of teaching. I was accused many times for introducing new kind of teaching to Catholicism. Those who strongly oppose me say that Father Bozek is changing the face of Catholicism, that Christian and especially Catholic religion is set in stone. There will never be women priests. We will never bless same-sex marriages, so on and so on. And yes, I have been introducing these changes because I believe that our religion, our Christianity, our Catholicism is continuing to evolve and change. What happened and started with Jesus and Paul in the first century is very different from the Christianity of the Middle Ages and, let's say, 12th century, which again was very different from the Christianity of the 19th century and Pope Pius IX, and is very different from the Christianity of the 21st century and the words and teachings of Pope Francis. Greek philosopher Heraclitus, who lived in the 5th century BC, said that you cannot enter twice into the same river. You may be in the very same place, walk into the river today, come back tomorrow, in the very same location, walk into the river again, and it will be a different river, because the water in that river is continuously flowing forward. You cannot enter into the same river twice. One can say you cannot enter into the same Catholicism, you cannot enter into the same church twice, because the blood of faith continues to flow century after century, generation after generation. And our faith, Christianity and Catholicism, has always evolved, is evolving today, and will continue to evolve tomorrow. Now think about your parenting skills, about the style that you have evolved of being a mother or a father to your children. If you have been blessed with more than one child, compare your parenting style from the time of having the firstborn to the time of having the youngest one. I am not blessed with children, but from what my sister tells me, it is a very different story between raising your oldest and raising your youngest child. When you have your very first child and she says "Dada" for the first time or makes first step on her own, you are oh and ah, you are taking pictures and memorizing this moment forever. Now, when your third or fourth child does the very same, you barely notice. Our parenting skills, our parenting styles develop and evolve from child to child because we are changing and the child in front of us is different as well. We are gaining new experiences, and the person that we are raising is a new, fresh person in front of us. You cannot enter the same faith twice. You cannot be the same Christian today as you were at the time of your first communion. Catholicism of the 21st century is very different from the Catholicism of 1950s or from the Catholicism of the 12th century. You don't believe me? Let me tell you a short example from the life and teaching from St. Thomas Aquinas. You should know by now that Thomas Aquinas is the most important, the preeminent Catholic theologian of all centuries. If you talk to bishops and popes or anyone who is important in the Vatican, they will tell you that there have never been anyone more important and more Catholic than Thomas Aquinas. But if you open the writings of that saint, you will realize that his teaching, his theology, is not identical to our Catholic theology today. For example, he was perfectly fine with abortion, especially if the fetus was female. In the first trimester, according to Thomas Aquinas, it was perfectly fine to abort a female fetus. Now, if the fetus was male, the window in which it was morally permissible was a bit shorter. This comes from the mouth of the most preeminent Catholic theologian of all centuries. But what Thomas Aquinas believed in the 12th century is not any longer the official position of the Vatican in the 21st century. Perhaps some of your friends, some of your family members keep telling you that coming to St. Stanislaus or believing in our values means that you are not Catholic anymore. But my answer to all these accusations is simple. Jesus' teaching was something new. Paul's teaching was a huge departure from a traditional Jewish religious teachings. What Thomas Aquinas said in the 12th century is different from popes said in the 20th century. And what we are doing here at St. Stanislaus, we continue this journey of faith. We walk into our Christianity that is flowing with the new blood of justice and inclusion, which is the same and yet new. That's why we here at St. Stanislaus believe in tradition. We keep what is sacred and true at the heart of the gospel. But we readjust, we evolve everything that needs to be evolved to be a church that is truly just, inclusive, and Christ-like. Amen.